President Trump says he will delay his administration tariffs on China and will meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping soon to finalize a trade agreement. Plus, South Korea continues to choke under unhealthy levels of fine dust. New countermeasures have been rolled out to try and tackle the issue, but they seem to be having little impact thus far. We are around 48 hours away from the big day. U.S. President Donald Trump says he's leaving for Hanoi on Monday local time for his second summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. He tweeted Sunday that the two leaders expect a continuation of the progress made at last June's summit in Singapore. He also highlighted the great relationship he has with the North's leader, praising the support he's received from Chinese President Xi Jinping. President Trump also stressed that the North Korean economy has great potential for growth due to its location and people, but only if the regime abandons its nuclear weapons. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is already on his way to Hanoi by train ahead of the second North Korea-U.S. summit. The North's official Korean Central News Agency reported that Kim left Pyongyang on Saturday afternoon. According to AFP, his train is heading south without stopping in Beijing, which means he will not be meeting Chinese leader Xi Jinping ahead of his summit with President Trump. Kim is expected to arrive at Dongdang Station in Langson Province, a city on the Vietnam-China border, on Tuesday morning. There, he will likely transfer by car to Hanoi. The Vietnamese government will reportedly ban all vehicles along the 170-kilometer road between the border station and Hanoi when Kim's vehicle convoy is on the move. Now, as the world awaits the second summit between the leaders of North Korea and the United States, America's top diplomat is expressing his hopes for a real substantive step to be made in Hanoi on the North's denuclearization. Kim Hyo-sun reports.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has expressed his hopes for practical progress to be made on North Korea's denuclearization during this week's second Pyeongyang-Washington summit. Speaking with Fox News Sunday, Pompeo said Washington's denuclearization policies remain the same and that its goal and mission are also very clear.
And now we're going to get to have a second summit where the two leaders can sit and have a frank, candid discussion, explore options, and I hope achieve what the ultimate end state is, creating a brighter future for North Korea and reducing the threat to the United States from the nuclear weapons that are today in North Korea.
However, he also didn't rule out the possibility that a real substantive step might not happen this time, explaining that if it requires more time, the U.S. will commit to that.
We're committed, and President Trump is committing to put in the hard work that it takes to get the outcome that the American people deserve.
Pompeo also highlighted the fact that the North's leader made clear his intentions to denuclearize during the first Kim-Trump summit held last year in Singapore. During a separate interview with CNN's State of the Union on Sunday, Pompeo said the Trump administration's stance on North Korea's denuclearization remains clear, and it has been calling for the process to be complete and verifiable. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
Now, back here in South Korea, President Moon Jae-in will likely discuss the upcoming Kim-Trump summit during his weekly meeting this afternoon with top aides at the Blue House. President Moon had previously ordered his chief secretaries to keep working their hardest to achieve denuclearization and permanent peace on the Korean Peninsula. Following the summit in Hanoi, Presidents Moon and Trump are also likely to discuss the summit's outcome, just as the U.S. president pledged late last week. One of the focal points of the upcoming North Korea-U.S. summit is whether the two leaders will declare an official end to the Korean War. Now, there are various opinions that have been raised on the form of such a potential agreement and what it might look like. Kim Mok-yeon reports.
The declaration of the end of the Korean War was a key agenda at the first summit between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump in Singapore in June last year. The issue has been closely watched since the Panmunjom Declaration was announced in April last year, where the two Koreas first agreed to declare the end of war on the Korean peninsula by the end of the year and to work with the nations that conceived the Korean War armistice, namely the United States and China, and transform it into a definite peace treaty. The focus is once again on whether Kim and Trump would be able to deliver a groundbreaking statement during their upcoming summit in Hanoi on February 27 and 28. In addition, many experts are weighing in with predictions on the form of the declaration and how much progress could be made during the two-day meeting. A diplomacy expert said that the two leaders might include a clause in their joint statement that contains the preconditions for the treaty and a deadline.
I think it will be something in between a declaration of the end of war and a peace treaty. The two sides might be able to announce a peace statement where they will promise to fulfill each other's interest by compromising to take denuclearizing steps and easing sanctions step by step.
The expert also mentioned the possibility that the two sides could seek to adopt a four-party approach that involves all the signatories of the armistice agreement.
Another way is for Pyongyang and Washington to declare the end of war first, which will then be confirmed by Seoul and Beijing.
The expert added that even if the Hanoi summit does not bring out an expected outcome, progress on the peninsula's peace treaty is still something to look forward to, as long as Kim and Trump continue the momentum even after the summit. Kim Mo-kyan, Arirang News.
Now, Vietnam, the venue for the second North Korea-U.S. summit, has a 69-year history of diplomatic ties with North Korea, strengthened by their similar political ideologies, mutual visits of top leaders, and the economic aid Pyongyang provided to Vietnam during the Vietnam War. Our Kim Da-mi tells us more about this friendship between the two countries.
Diplomatic ties between North Korea and Vietnam date back to 1950, when North Korea, along with the former Soviet Union and China, became one of the first three countries in the world to recognize Vietnam as an independent country. They shared a socialist ideology, and mutual visits by their leaders, Ho Chi Minh of Vietnam and Kim Il-sung of North Korea in 1958 and 59, helped them build on that friendship. North Korea gave substantial military and economic aid to Vietnam during the Vietnam War. The two countries also shared the idea that the war was a struggle against imperialism, something the Korean peninsula had experienced itself. But Vietnam's attack on Cambodia in 1978 and other decisions such as its market reforms in the 1980s caused its ties with North Korea to cool temporarily.
Despite political differences with North Korea, Vietnam acknowledged the North as an irreplaceable partner.
With its economy stable by the early 2000s, Vietnam again sought to normalize relations with North Korea by donating rice and through visits by high-ranking officials.
Through the upcoming summit, North Korea will not only expand its diplomacy in general, but also improve its relations with Vietnam in particular.
Despite the ups and downs of the last 69 years, the two countries will be looking to maintain and strengthen their long-standing ties. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
Now, it's only natural to focus on the summit itself at this point, with the start of the big meeting roughly 48 hours away. But thinking ahead, what's next for North Korea-U.S. relations, denuclearization and the peace process after Kim Jong-un and President Trump bid each other farewell on Thursday? Our Shin Se-min takes a closer look.
A phone call last week between presidents of South Korea and the U.S. may have provided some clues about this week's summit. Presidents Moon and Trump floated the idea of South and North Korea resuming their joint projects. President Moon said Seoul is determined to take up the role if President Trump asks if that's the way to lessen the U.S. burden. And to that, President Trump reportedly reacted positively, perhaps indicating a relaxation of the international sanctions choking the North. That would allow the divided Koreas to resume their economic projects like linking up their railways and roads, and even the South Korean tours to Mount Kumgang that had been stalled since 2008.
President Moon had said earlier that when we start economic cooperation between the South and the North, the easiest place to start will probably be the tours to Mount Kumgang. Also up for a potential revival, joint industrial complex at Kaesong. The complex was shut down in 2016 after North Korea test-fired multiple missiles, and it remains closed due to a ban on forming joint ventures with the North and on operating the financial institutions that would be needed to pay wages. And after the Vietnam summit, there might finally be a visit to Seoul by Kim Jong-un, which would be a historic first for a North Korean leader. Although Kim had promised to come by the end of last year, the visit hasn't happened yet. But with dialogue with Pyongyang and Washington now back on, it's believed that Kim might have less to worry about if he did come. What will happen in Hanoi is still very much up in the air, but hopes are high that the leaders will make a breakthrough and speed up the process of denuclearization and the regime's economic reforms, starting with deals between the two Koreas themselves. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Now let's move on to a potentially big breakthrough on the US-China trade talks. US President Donald Trump has announced he's going to delay a looming increase in tariffs on Chinese goods. For more, we have our business correspondent Kim Hye-sung on the line. Hye-sung, this seems like a really positive development. Tell us more.
Mark, President Trump said on Sunday that he would delay an increase in tariffs on Chinese imports that was scheduled for March 2nd. He tweeted that there was substantial progress in trade talks over the weekend, including issues like intellectual property protection, tech transfers, and currency. Without this delay, import duties on $200 billion worth of Chinese goods would have jumped from 10% to 25%. Just to recap, this March 1st deadline, or the 90-day trade truce, was agreed upon by President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping in December on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Argentina to de-escalate trade tensions. Given how the uncertainty posed by the trade war has taken a toll on both economies and caused some turmoil in financial markets, Trump's tariff deadline extension is good news for the global economy and stock markets.
And Hye-sung, considering what we are hearing now from President Trump, what can we expect going forward?
As for now, we're likely to see continuing high-level talks between the U.S. and China. The Chinese side is also expressing optimism. China's Xinhua news agency said substantial progress was made on specific issues at the latest round of trade talks, the latest round meaning the third round of high-level talks led by U.S. Trade Chief Robert Lighthizer and Chinese Vice Premier Liu He in Washington. President Xi Jinping delivered a positive message to President Trump in a letter on Friday, calling on the U.S. and China to redouble their efforts to meet halfway on a trade deal. So now it looks like it's very likely that President Trump and Xi will meet at the U.S. leaders' Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida next month to conclude a trade agreement and end the year-long standoff, which President Trump also mentioned in his tweet this Sunday, local time. Back to you, Mark.
Okay, Hye-sung, thank you very much for that comprehensive report, and let's hope they hammer out a deal because it will help everyone around the world, particularly us here in South Korea, which has been struggling with the uncertainties caused by this trade tussle between Beijing and Washington. Now, air quality across most of South Korea is forecast to remain unfortunately bad throughout the entire day, with unhealthy levels of fine dust expected to be concentrated in skies above the nation's central region. High concentrations of fine dust are expected for Seoul and the surrounding metropolitan areas, as well as Gangwon-do and Chungcheong-do provinces. The National Institute of Environmental Research says it's largely due to stagnant air and fine dust particles blowing in from overseas. Staying with fine dust, and cars, trucks and other road-based vehicles are often viewed as the main culprits behind this fine dust we tend to see in South Korea these days. While we shouldn't understate the negative impact they have, new studies have shown that ships are also a much bigger contributor to air pollution than many people think. Lee Seung-jae reports.
Thick, black smoke bellows out of a large ship anchored in the harbor. The filthy emissions are constantly pumped into the air during the several days it can take to load and unload the ship's cargo. That's because the vessel's engines must be constantly running in order to operate various facilities and components in the ship. The fine dust that a large vessel discharges in a single day is said to be equivalent to a staggering 500,000 trucks.
There are always about 4 to 5 ships here, and we're worried about the fine dust emissions, so the crew members always wear a face mask.
Last year, more than 3,000 vessels came through Pyeongtaek port. Ships use low-cost bunker C oil, which releases emissions that are 7 times more harmful to the human body than regular gasoline used in most vehicles.
There's bunker C oil, which contains the maximum 3.5% sulfur content being used by vessels. It's being released as it is, with no purification.
However, change could be on the horizon. Last year, the Incheon Jong-un thermal power plant installed an AMP facility which supplies electricity directly from land to ships, reducing the amount of air pollutants by 97%. Electric power supply facilities are already being used at ports in the U.S. and Europe. While such facilities cost around $1 million each, the South Korean government is planning to subsidize the costs in a bid to slash fine dust levels in the nation. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now, in sports news, Hee-young won the LPGA Thailand for the 3rd time on Sunday, beating her fellow Korean Lee Min-ji by a single stroke. The 30-year-old carded a final round 65 for an overall 22 under par, bringing her LPGA title tally to 4 now. Runner-up E had a chance to force a playoff hole with a 14-foot eagle putt, but came up just short. With the victory, Yang is expected to move from number 37 to number 2 in the race to the CME Globe. The most exciting time of the year for tech fans is finally here. The Mobile World Congress in Barcelona kicks off on this Monday. Some 2,400 companies from around the world, including Korea's Samsung Electronics, LG Electronics and SK Telecom, are front and center at the annual event. The theme this year is intelligent connectivity, and discussions will be held on related topics, including high-speed 5G networks, the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence and big data. Global tech giants as well as startups will be showing off their latest products and services that incorporate these technologies as they aim to set trends for the coming years and make all our lives more convenient. And staying in Barcelona, tech companies aren't missing out on this golden opportunity to unveil their latest devices at the Mobile World Congress 2019. LG Electronics has unveiled its 5G smartphone. It's called the LG V50 ThinQ. It did so on the eve of the MWC on Sunday. The new gadget offers rich multimedia features through its dual-screen accessory, which tacks onto a second 16-centimeter OLED screen to the side of the V50, enabling users to move apps from one display to another quickly with touch controls on the lower display. Samsung Electronics will be demonstrating its 5G tech during the event and give visitors a first-hand look at its Galaxy S10 5G smartphone that was unveiled last week in San Francisco. Chinese tech giant Huawei also showcased its first foldable smartphone ahead of the Mobile World Congress. Violence erupted over the weekend along Venezuela's borders with Colombia and Brazil as authorities clashed with demonstrators over the government's ban on humanitarian aid. For more on this and other stories from around the world, let's turn today to our Oh Soo-young, who's sitting in the hot seat for our Noaram. So Soo-young, the standoff led to several deaths and hundreds of casualties.
That's right, Mark. 4 people, including a 14-year-old boy, were killed and 300 have been injured, according to Colombian authorities on Saturday. Violent clashes broke out as Venezuelan government forces opened fire on civilians, attempting to bring over food and medical supplies amid the Maduro leadership's ban on aid deliveries. Soldiers opened fire against civilians using live ammunition and rubber bullets. Opposition leader Juan Guaido has called on the international community to have all options open to remove Maduro from presidency. More than 50 countries, including the US and European countries, have now recognized Guaido as Venezuela's legitimate leader as they mount pressure on Maduro to step down. British Prime Minister Theresa May is seeking more time until her Brexit deal is put to a final vote in Parliament, postponing it to as late as mid-March. That's roughly 2 weeks before the UK is set to leave the European Union. May told reporters on Sunday that the so-called meaningful vote wouldn't be happening this week, but it would take place by March 12th. The delay is largely seen as an attempt to buy more time as May seeks to win approval for a plan to cushion Britain's departure from the EU. The upcoming vote will be the second meaningful vote on the Prime Minister's deal after her original plan was rejected in the worst parliamentary defeat in modern British history. Bangladeshi security forces have shot and killed a man suspected of trying to hijack a plane from Dhaka to Dubai. The suspect, believed to have been 25 years old, reportedly threatened to blow up the plane while waving a gun. Reports say he refused to surrender and resisted arrest before he was taken down by commandos who stormed the plane. He later died from his gunshot wounds. All 148 passengers and crew members on board disembarked safely after the plane made an emergency landing at Chittagong.
Good morning. We can feel that the warm spring is on the horizon, but ultrafine dust is keeping us inside. And unfortunately, dust air will continue for most parts of the country, with an ultrafine dust advisory remaining in place for many western and central areas, including here in the capital now. And temperature readings will be 3 to 4 degrees lower than yesterday, but it will still be quite bearable, with wide temperature gaps of nearly 10 degrees Celsius. And beware that morning lows continue to kick off in low single digits for most parts of the country. And this afternoon, highs will range from the low to mid-teens under partly sunny skies. And notice how warm it's going to be over in Daegu and Gyeongju, Busan topping out at 15 and 16 degrees Celsius. And as for the weather outlook, large temperature fluctuations will carry on with no precipitation in the forecast for the capital area for the time being now. And over in Hanoi, where preparations for the second North Korea-U.S. summit are well underway, clouds are in store for Monday and light showers are expected for tomorrow. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all we have for now on this Monday morning here in Seoul. Stay tuned to us here on Arirang TV, and a reminder that we have our next newscast coming up at noon Korea time with our very own Lee Ji-yoon. She'll be speaking to our correspondents who are currently in Hanoi ahead of the big North Korea-U.S. summit. Until next time, goodbye.
나는 앞으로도 언제든 또다시 미국 대통령과 마주 앉을 준비가 되어 있으며
Chairman Kim and I will meet again on February 27th and 28th in Vietnam.